Okay, so this might be a question you've probably actually never asked yourself, but depending on what kind of writing you want to get into in the future, you're going to have to eventually face this, I think. And that is, should I get a writing partner? What do you think, Riley? We'll break it down. All right, so hi, I'm Rashni Lamino. I'm an actress, a voiceover artist, a fantasy novelist, a former game writer, and songwriter. I have done a lot of creative things over the years, and people ask me about it. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it all here on this channel. And if you have questions, I'll just point you here. These are all the thoughts in my head as a creative. So if you've ever thought about uh, living a creative life, or you just wonder what goes on in our crazy heads, here you go. Hopefully it helps. You've just met my writing partner. His name's Riley. He just sits on my lap and makes sure I get my words out every day. So, yes, yeah, you're a very good writing partner. Good boy. It's kind of a question that you don't ask yourself until the opportunity presents itself to you. You know, we're not necessarily taught how to write with other people in school. We do have group projects, though, and we know how fun those can be and how well those can go. But in general, we are not taught to write with partners. And the reason I say it's just not something that you think about, because most of the time, you might not ever really have to deal with it. Like, I was a journalism major. I didn't write with a partner. You know what I mean? Um, as a novelist, I don't write with another novelist. But if you do corporate writing, and when I mean corporate, I mean like, you hired me to write for your TV show. You hired me to write for your video game. You will be collaborating with other people. That's just how it is. You're going to be in a writer's room. So then you will have to learn how to write with other people. And you're going to have to learn how to mesh your style with other people's styles. And so it does make a difference. It might come up, is what I'm trying to say. You might think, like, do collaborations really work? Yeah, there's a couple collaborations I can think of right now in Hollywood that you know, are doing pretty well. Filmmaking is a collaborative art. Making music is a collaborative art. So there's a lot of creative things that are collaborative anyway. But yeah, when I was in school, I went to Michigan State. The collaboration I heard a lot about was Jim Cash and Jack Epps. And you might be like, oh, I know, you just groom so much. I think this is going to be a Riley thing, grooming in every video. Go on now. He's like, I will just groom in every video. I'm like, okay, Kat, good job. Um, you might not have heard their names, but you might have seen their movies. So, Secret of My Success or Anaconda. Maybe you've seen Dick Tracy or a little film called Top Gun. Yes, that was Jim Cash and Jack Epps. And to my knowledge, Jim never left Michigan. He stayed at Michigan State and he taught screenwriting, and he never moved to Hollywood. His partner, his writing partner, was the one who was here in Hollywood. And they made it work. You know, you've, I'm pretty sure you've heard at least one of those movies I mentioned. Another collaboration I can think of that worked really well is, you've probably heard me talk about one of my favorite authors, Patricia C. Reedy. She is an accomplished fantasy author in her own right, and she partnered with, let me see, I have it written down, Caroline, I think it's Stevermer, who's also a fantasy author, solo, accomplished in her own right. And they kind of accidentally collaborated. They were friends and they decided to do this thing called the letter game. And in the letter game, it's basically like improv for writers, where one person starts off and they write a letter, dear so and so, and they kind of come up with something in their life or whatever, and they send it off to their friend, and then their friend writes back as a different character, comments on what's happening in the first letter. Here's what's going on in my life, and you just keep exchanging letters. And the only thing is, you are not allowed to talk about the plot. So they did this writing exercise, and they realized at the end of it, they're like, we have enough to write a book. And so they did. They published a book out of it. They obviously had to clean up some plot points, but that was a complete accident. They went on to do two more books in the series. So, yeah. There you go, collaboration. So I think it's possible. I think it's possible whether you do it deliberately, like the Top Gun writers, or you do it by accident, like Patricia C. Reedy and Caroline Silvermeyer did. Now, then the question is, well, okay, fine. I want to co-write. How do I find a co-writer? Thank you for the tale. Your best bet is probably going to be looking around in your peer groups as far as like, are you in a writing class? Is there another writer there whose style you like, who you get along with that you'd want to work with? Are you in a writers group? A writing critique peer group. Oh, I like this person. I like their style. I would love to write with them. I had a co-writer briefly for a film, and we met at a Christmas networking party. Okay. So you can meet people pretty much anywhere, honestly. Um, but I would say you want to meet like-minded people. So your best bet is going to be like in another writing class, in a writers group, or anything related to what it is you want to do. For example, Jack Epps was Jim's student. So that's how they met. You know what I mean? I'm not sure how Patricia and Caroline met. I would assume maybe through like a writers group or something like that. So, okay, you found your writing partner. What are some best practices? Okay, the first thing is, the first thing is get it in writing. And you're like, duh, yeah, we're writing. I get it. Haha. I mean a contract. I mean an agreement. It doesn't even have to be that formal. Put it in an email back and forth between you guys, as long as you both agree on the terms. So basically, when I was co-writing with this gentleman, we met at a Christmas party, and it sort of fizzled out because he did move back to Kentucky, and then we weren't really able to meet, and so just the project sort of died. But he did send me a contract, and I was very impressed. Yes, Riley, it was very impressive. In the contract, he said, okay, here's the project we're working on, this specific project, which is good because you are not my co writer forever. You are just my co writer on this one thing. Okay. So here's the project. Here's what it's about. Here's how we're going to divvy up the work. Here's how we're going to, if it goes anywhere, here's how we're going to divvy up the credits and the earnings. Um, if this partnership does not move forward, then this idea ends here. I am not going to take it and create something with it. You will not take it and create something with it. The idea is strictly between us two. Okay. So all of it was stipulated. And I really appreciated that. I was like, cool. Yeah, I can get behind it. And it's important because you need to make sure if it does go somewhere, you don't want to get into fights over, well, I wrote this much, so I should get this much credit. I am entitled to this much earnings. No, what do you mean I wrote this much? You don't want to get into things like that. Um, and I think it's important to have a time limit on the project as well, you know, because next point, you might not vibe with them. And so I think you need to do a test run with them to see if you even get along. Okay. You might get along beautifully in class. You have the same in jokes or whatever sense of humor, but then you find out your writing styles do not vibe. Sorry, Riley. I'm using Riley's tail as a pointer. He's not really into that. Calm your tail, kitty. Um, maybe you just want to write 5 pages and you send it to them and then they write 5 pages and you just do back and forth like that. Maybe you want them to write the first draft and you'll do the punch up. Maybe they would love to sit down one day, break the entire story with you, and then you guys write it together line by line by line, together in the same room. Okay? If that doesn't work for you, if they want to write it line by line with you, but you want to write it remotely, 5 pages at a time, you got to figure that out because it's not going to work if one of you wants to write it one way and the other person wants to write it another way. And that's why you do the trial run. It's totally okay if it doesn't work out. Same thing like with me and my co-writer. Life got in the way. It just fizzled out. He moved back to Kentucky and other things happened. That's fine. I wasn't going to be like, "Oh my gosh, no, we must finish this project," Like life happens. you have an out, you know. If we don't get this thing completed within 6 months, it's cool, you know. No hard feelings, you know, that sort of thing. So you do need the trial run to just see how you guys drive and see if it's even worth moving forward. What are you doing, cat? Yes. Okay. Meow, meow, baby. Yeah. So another thing to know about this is it is collaborative. And so if if you're precious about your work, if you're precious about your ideas, if you're like, no, it's my way or the highway with writing, you probably aren't going to do well with a co-writer because you are going to have to talk about things. You're not going to agree on everything. You're going to go in there and critique their work. They're going to go in there and critique yours. They might say, "Hey, I don't see this plot point going this way." And you're going to be like, "No, I I don't agree. It has to go this way." If you can't be flexible, if they can't be flexible, it's not going to work out. And if you're precious and you cannot take critiques, it's not going to work out, you know, because you're going to be giving each other notes all the time. So you have to be okay with that. Another point, final point. I know I'm trying to get you to stop with the tail, baby. He's like, no, fine. We'll just wave your tail around. It'll be great. Another point to think about is you really want to write with somebody. This might be a little harsh, and I apologize if it is, but I firmly believe this. You really want to write with someone who is at your level or around your level. Probably not too high. You can learn a lot from someone who's writing at a higher level than you, but they'll probably be busy with other things. And someone who's not really low. So, like, if you're I gotta tuck your tail here, baby. Sorry. Like, let's say you're here, you're writing at this level, and they're here. Okay. So it's not even like, oh my gosh, how many scripts have you sold? It's not like that at all. You know, how many books have you written? That doesn't matter. Talent is talent. And if you can work with them, if you get along with them, that's even more important. But the question is more like, you know, let's say you're writing here and you know story structure really well and you can turn out drafts really fast and you have really great ideas. And they're here and they can barely string two sentences together. And they have, you know, they need help with grammar. They don't know formatting, whatever. You will spend more time getting them to your level than you will actually working on the project. And that's fine if you want to do that. To me, that's more of a mentoring relationship than a co writing relationship because if I'm going to co-write with you, I want to hit the ground running, which means we are both coming at this at a really good professional level and we can just go immediately. I'm not sitting there trying to make you, you know, be a better writer because you already have the fundamentals. Do you know what I mean? Again, like I said, it might be harsh. To me, that would be more of a mentoring thing. That's not what I want in a co-writer. I do not want to be mentoring you. I want to be able to collaborate with you right out of the gate. And that kind of it kind of goes along with the test drive of them. You know, you're test driving each other. Um, I had a friend who, in our writers group, they wrote like they texted, and it was like, I mean, you can get away with it in a text message where it's like, "Hey, you know, 5 million Ys. How are you? 5 million Us." But I was like, I'm not sure how that would be in a script. Like, we've got this Dory speak going. Is this on purpose? Is the character supposed to talk like a Dory speaking whale, or do you just like this style of writing? You know, I think it turned out they just liked that style of writing, which is fine, but that doesn't work with my style. So I'm probably not going to co-write with you. You know what I mean? Um, Again, like I said, maybe that's a bit of a harsh take, but that's where I'm at, you know. Because it's something if I want to pitch this, if I want to sell this project, then it needs to be at a high professional level and meet a certain standard. And I don't want to be kind of like in the old group projects back in school. I don't want to be carrying your weight. And so that's why you test drive them. And that's why you guys have that audition process with each other to see if you are, you know, both on the same level. Um, yeah. Yeah, so those would be my thoughts on co-writing. If you never want to be in a writer's room, if you never want to, you know, write for certain mediums which are by nature collaborative, then you're okay. I just want to write my books. You know, awesome. You can go with solo, you can be a lone wolf, and you don't need to uh, collaborate and have a co-writer. But if you ever want to do any sort of writing that would have you be in a writer's room or collaborate with people, it's a good skill to have. It really is. And just even learning how to mesh those ideas with people and go with the flow and bounce ideas off of other people. That's the best thing I think about co-writing is having another head in the room of someone you can bounce ideas off of. Um, so yeah, pros and cons goes both ways. But let me know what you think. Put your comments down below. If you want to keep the discussion going, I do have a Discord that's in the notes. If you want to read my solo written fantasy books, the links are also down below as well. Support the channel, all that good stuff. You can find that all below. You know where all the buttons are, so hit all the buttons if you like it, want to share it, all that good stuff. But the most important thing, get out there, create your art because the world needs more art. So go do it. I hope you found it helpful, and I will talk to you soon.